In this video, we will discuss model view controller architecture, which is particularly relevant to the structure of JavaFX program with graphical user interface front end and business logic design in the back end. I'd like to keep track of my progress through this topic and share my notes with you as we move forward. So this is a very typical set of components that you will find in most business applications, video games. I would say anything that uses GUI type of interface will benefit from this design. So it comes with a set of definitions and rules. So we need to discuss model, controller, and the view. The model is a collection of business objects or data tier objects. With respect to model view controller architecture, the rule is pretty simple. No interaction with GUI or console output whatsoever. Just no interaction. What data tier objects can do is that they can have computations, formulas, algorithms such as search or sort, data generation, like creating arrays of prime numbers, Fibonacci sequence, and so on. They can also be loading data from a file or a database, basically any data manipulation or a mathematical calculation as part of the model tier. So this is a collection of business objects that encapsulate our computations, provide methods for computation, provide methods to validate computation results, and also retain results of computation and maintain all these objects in good state. The view is a collection of all GUI components such as windows, buttons, scroll bars, text boxes, anything visible or clickable or touchscreen sensitive or responsive to an input from a keyboard. Responsibilities of the view is to display the data and accept user input, and the rules are pretty simple. No interaction with the model tier objects. So then, how can view communicate with the model tier? For this, we have a controller class. Basically, we can create an object that separates these two tiers, and sitting right on the boundary between the view and the model. In JavaFX, a controller is typically attached to a single window, but it's not a requirement in a broader sense of MVC design. The important part of the controller is that it just sits right here on the boundary. At a specific time, we can have multiple controllers in memory simultaneously, especially if your application has multiple windows. The responsibility of the controller is to communicate messages between the view objects and the model tier objects. When the user taps or clicks a button or enters text in a text field, controller knows which business objects in the model tier should be notified and which methods should be invoked. When the model objects change, for example, when data is loaded from a file, the controller knows which objects in the view tier should be updated to display the new data. No user data is ever retained or computed by the controller itself. Any such tasks must be communicated to the appropriate business objects in the model tier. So the controller keeps references to all view and model tier objects that are involved in the use case for which the controller is designed. As the controller receives the input from the view, it may optionally validate the input before passing it to the model tier. In summary, as you can see, model view controller architecture is a set of rules on how the view objects learn about changes in the model objects and vice versa, which is coordinated by the controller class. When multiple views are present in the application, controller objects coordinate the updates between themselves primarily to keep all the views up to date with all changes taking place in the model tier. Model tier objects are most valuable part of the system because they represent the core set of features of the application logic. Therefore, your business objects must be kept in a portable state, that they should work exactly the same regardless of the operating system environment. Model tier objects are reusable between multiple projects and between multiple applications. The view structure, on the other hand, is very likely to change between operating system platforms. It gets updated from one GUI library to another. It may be implemented differently in separate applications. Once the data model and the view are defined with all required objects and methods, the controller can be generated very quickly. And imagine if we neglected the controller in the middle design. Formulas and algorithms would be able to slip into the user interface components, and vice versa. Event handlers of the user actions would penetrate into the business layer. This could make everything extremely messy, chaotic, hard to follow, and nearly impossible to reuse from project to project, because this is like contamination of logical layers. Computations are irrelevant to GUI clicks or taps on the touch screen, while the GUI-related code makes business logic impossible to understand. So that's the idea. And also, controller is a distinct place for all user action event handlers with some basic validation logic. So that's another massive advantage of the model view controller or MVC design rules.